Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Masi Vugutsa, the host for Campus Debates, and specifically Season 2. We have an exhilarating episode before you, but before that, welcome to Campus Debates. You have had debaters from different universities making arguments and points from time immemorial ever since we started this episode of Campus Debates, specifically Season 2. And consistently, you've had a judging pool of very credited people who have the capacity to listen to arguments and determine who gets to move on to the next rounds and who doesn't. All of this time, the debaters' lives have been in the hands of these judges. So we decided to give you a twist and give them a taste of their own medicine. For this episode, we will have the people who sat on this panel as amazing judges speaking and actively debating to show you how exactly they became professionals at the sport itself, and at the same time to give them a taste of their own medicine where their lives, for once, are in the hands of debaters themselves. Now let us welcome the amazing speakers for this round. From side proposition, we have Kiragu Kimani and Ramon Joe. And from side opposition, we have Wycliffe Otieno and Perez Ngono. Majority of the speakers before you are people who've been affiliated with different institutions prior, but for this particular round, we get to see them as masters of the sport itself and them debating before us. Now that we know our speakers, I would love to welcome the judges to introduce themselves, help us know something a little bit better about them before we get to the masters themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Leona Gola, and it's a pleasure to finally be on this side for once. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane Baraza. Something interesting, I'm the Vice President of University of Nairobi Debate Association.
Hi everyone, Oseni Lucy here, again on the panel. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Shamia and I'm honored to be here.
An amazing judging panel. Considering the fact that they are masters at their game, we now have a 4-people panel for them to determine which team between opposition and proposition gets to win this round. Now, allow us to ask a few questions to the speakers. Speakers, could you tell us something interesting that has happened throughout your debate journey up until this point?
Thank you. I'll go first. My name is Kiragu Kimani. And I think something great that has happened in my debate journey is meeting the people I would currently call my family, and I think it's probably the best place to be. Thank you, everyone.
How do you even go after that? So something that has really happened, and I credit debate for, is the ability to relearn. A lot of the concepts that I got through when I was starting to debate, I've had to relearn those concepts over and over, and I love debate for that, just that approach to life and how you can relearn things, yeah.
We have heard from the proposition team. Some have found family, and at the same time, others have had to relearn things that they already had or concepts they already formed within their minds based off of the fact that they engage with debates. I think that qualifies for them to be masters by that own merit. With that, we welcome opposition to equally introduce themselves and respond to the similar question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Perez Ngono, and I think something interesting that has happened to me during my debating journey is, one, being able to go to class and meet relating concepts that I met in the debating room. Secondly, is being able to stand for an ideology, and probably in future, I might be able to table a thesis as to why probably capitalism is not an ethical option regardless, because of what I've been able to learn in my debating journey. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Wycliffe Otieno. I'm not happy to be on this side. There's a lot of people who have vendetta against me, especially on that side. One thing that has been very instrumental for me in my debate career, especially now that we're doing a master's round, is I've been able to debate against almost every person in this audience or in this panel, and I've beat all of them. If I've not beat you yet, the time is coming soon. Thank you.
And I think one interesting thing that Perez forgot to let you know is that she can never go around or even a debate tournament without mentioning the argument between capitalism and Marxism as a whole, which I think is a very unique thing about her. But from side opposition, what we get is that the people within the team have been able to be exposed to different ideologies and concepts for Perez, and at the same time, Wycliffe has been able to beat almost everyone within the debate rooms, but I think that's a lie, but it's fine. Now, I will allow the speakers to have their seats, and we will get right on to the motion. The motion for this round reads, this House prefers a government where the President appoints cabinet secretaries or ministers based on meritocracy over patronage. This House prefers a government where the President appoints cabinet secretaries or ministers based on meritocracy over patronage. I think that's an interesting motion in and of itself. Do you think your cabinet secretaries need to actively be enrolled in the different positions that they hold and be experts in those spaces, or do you think them being taught by political figures and things like that is something that is far much beneficial? I will allow first speaker proposition to start off their arguments. Here.
Let's set up my timer, then I'll promptly begin. Okay, shout out to my partner. He's been very helpful when coming up with the ideas for this motion. All right, the cabinet secretary role in every country is an integral position for two reasons. The decisions these people are involved in directly affect the lives of people en masse. This looks like the ability and authority of a cabinet secretary to call for a holiday tomorrow, and that particularly happens. That affects businesses, that affects things. Secondly, we operate in a democracy, which means that they're in a unique position under the separation of powers. They operate under the executive, which has a role particularly in government. But again, let's look at the kind of people they want to defend, right? The nature of politicians. We think that politics, and for you to flourish as a politician, you have to be a climber in the power ladder. This looks like for you to ascend in the echelons of power, you need to trade favors. This looks like probably campaigns, and secondly, you actively promote political ideologies of those who are in power. The impact of this then becomes you are indebted to be tied to an existing political system. We think that at the end of the day, if you take that side of the world, you are closing yourself into that kind of bubble by this politics and the nature of it in and of itself. Secondly, what are we defending? The experts that are primarily going to be in this field. This looks like people certified by academic qualifications. This is proven by standardized tests where they are proved by deliverables that they operate with in each and every field. Where are they going to deliver? We think that the indirect mandate offered to cabinet secretaries without conflicting political ideals. This looks like in their service, it is based on the power given to them by their people. And secondly, they are bound by the law and the constitution that empowers them to be of service on the best way possible on behalf of its citizens. The impact of what you're going to get on that side of the world is that the biggest loyalist, number one. The two is people that are intrinsically in your corner are the ones who are going to be in those positions of power. Secondly, these are going to be people who actively listen to you, they've been on your back and that kind of thing. We think that these are people who are going to be doing your bidding, and again, they've had a proven track record. These people are not just people that were chosen yesterday and they are sent to such positions of power. They had a track record of essentially buying into your ideologies, buying into what you want to provide to the world in and of itself. The impact of this then becomes the sector in which you use to measure the execution of policies that affect people on a day-to-day lives. It inherently does not deserve to be to people who serve political interests, because as we've proven, their interests are primarily to those in power. Now, I'm going to make an argument why does this expertise matter and how it does make an actual difference in the lives of citizens. I've talked to you about the position of the executive and the implementation of policies that are enforceable by government. Intuition prompt panel. If you're a company and you want to be particularly successful, you don't hire your friends to be in those positions of managerial power. You hire people who know what they're doing. You hire people who will deliver based on, certified metrics and that kind of chart. This is true for particular reasons, and that's what you get in our side. These people are qualified. This looks like the intuition prompt of not having what we are currently experiencing in status quo, where health ministers who are particularly incompetent operated in these positions of power for far too long. We think that with this particular position of power, where they can directly influence the lives of people, you don't need to hold these people in these particular positions. Again, the impact of this then becomes you get more utilization of more efficient utilization of resources. The comparative is this. In that side of the world, there is individual gain prioritization for two reasons. There is the acquisition incentive for these particular politicians because, again, the incentives are pegged to those in political power, right? This looks like those them in and of themselves want to, gather as much wealth. They want to experience that cabinet secretary life for that short-termism nature of those who are currently in power. Secondly, the argument on self-preservation, right? This looks like the nature of politics in and of itself. They want to preserve their political incentives, therefore, they will be in the corner of whoever sits in the top position of the executive. The impact of this then, the resultant overall impact, is that you're more likely to mismanage public resources because at the end of the day, your incentives are not primarily pegged to the people, but rather you are pegged on observation of trying to preserve political ideals. We think that the executive and the position it serves primarily as a separated power, and it serves also as a checking mechanisms where it's, looking at the legislature and how it, serves its position in power. And you don't need to have people who are actively playing political ping pong in these positions of power because you don't get these checking mechanisms that are primarily supposed to be inflicted on this on these positions. I think time is of the essence here. Again, we think that there is more diversion of the kind of harm that accrues to citizens. Because on our side of the world, you do not have people in this high position actively taking away the means of livelihood of these kinds of citizens. This looks like people who will sit comfortably in these positions of power and take away the incomes of interns. That is what you have in place where people cannot explain why these policies are primarily crucial to the citizens of this particular country. What you get in that side of the world is that you cannot have people that are in this seat that are primarily accountable. Here.
An amazing speech from the first master of this round. According to what he argues is that they prefer technocrats existing within the spaces rather than politicians. With that, we welcome the first master from side opposition to engage with this argument. Here.
So, I'm open to points of information. Patronage system is a spoiled system where the winning political party gives government jobs to its supporters, probably so that they can actually hinge the policies of that political party in part of the policy implementation or executive mandates, etc., etc. This is generally to say that executive deals with civil service. Implementation of government policies programs is something that they have been appointed by the president to do or generally to enforce to like the society or to the government of Kenya, but based, say, on the winning political party. So Kenya Kwanza is the ruling political party in the Republic of Kenya. The Kenya Kwanza regime, probably the president, would want to appoint cabinet secretaries who are going to assist him to enforce policies based on his manifestos so that they can serve the goodwill of the citizens or the Republic of Kenya in general. Something you need to understand suddenly is not that cabinet secretaries are not now going to take out, like say, if you buy onto their side, it's not that merit guarantees that now the CS of probably health is now not going to take the money of interns, or the CS of health probably now, because they have a degree in like probably medical whatever, is now going to like now start serving the goodwill of the people. Why is this the case? You need some kind of contextual analysis as to the kind of system that we exist in. The government or the Republic of Kenya operates on a political or presidential system. At a point in time that elections are done, people are now saying, this is what we did to you during the campaign tenure. So in result, or as a result of this, we would like you to return that favor probably and assist us to assist you to implement these policies, or like to enforce or oversee these particular policies. Why we generally think that that is okay is because, one, you need to understand that because we've told you this is more of a presidential or political system, the executive is now politically entrenched. You cannot generally, you can't try to do away with that, but we tell you that the problem with this is, one, look at the laws. The Constitution says the winning party takes it all. Kenya Kwanza government has the largest ruling number of legislatures in, like, say, parliament. So a law wants to be passed. And say, for example, competency-based curriculum needs to be implemented in society or in, like, the education sector. So people say, well, this was part of our manifesto, so they debate, and then they say, well, probably let us pass it. I, as the Cabinet Secretary of Education, though I am not, do not have that power to now say, well, competency-based curriculum is bad. I do not think that this thing is actually good for the learning development of children. My work as the president put me there was to enforce it. I'm now left with two alternatives, as what we saw in UK. If you cannot take us to pro-Brexit, you'd rather quit one. Or secondly, just join the wagon like Rishi Sunak, and then probably we are going to get you out of there. That is something that these people have. Now, the third thing that we are offering you to probably mitigate such things is, if you adopt patronage system, one, we consent that these people are generally politicians to a certain extent, but you can also have it in this way. Ambassador Monica Juma is in the patronage system, but she also has degrees to support the foreign or international whatever that she's doing, because she was an ambassador and she read for that. You can have it in two ways. They can either have the papers or not have the papers, but let us just support that these people are just there for the sake of political systems. Kiragu, will take you just a moment. What now happens in this particular scenario is that you want them to mitigate the political pressure that comes in. In the ground is politically hostile. They want to see implementation of these things. You're having opposition party criticizing you and saying how these things are bad to such an extent that you cannot even implement what you think is the goodwill of the people. Where you're incentivized to actually implement this thing for the goodwill of the people, even on patronage, is because you do not want your government or Kenya Kwanza government to be seen as a bad person, or to be seen as a party that just came into power to just make the people suffer. That is one. But even secondly, you also want the people, or even the people who didn't buy into the Kenya Kwanza government, to say, at least you're doing something. At least you're bringing something to the table. And that is why we think that patronage actually assists or like mitigates some of the harms that Ramon actually speaks about. And even how they handle this political pressure, because of the kind of opposition that they get, is because, one, remember, they are politicians, but then they are having technocrats who kind of advise them. So to this extent, they can go out and say, this is what our government promised you. But now when you come to like this implementation and everything, at least the advice they've received from their technocrats assists them to work in a functionability way.
All right. Do you think that the parliament should hold the cabinet accountable at all?
The parliament needs to hold the cabinet accountable, because generally that is the first thing that they do whenever they are actually, when they are nominated, they first of all go through like this scrutiny and everything like that. So we generally think that it is okay for like parliament to hold these people accountable. And even it is actually so easy to hold them accountable during a patronage system, because you're going to be like, these were not our policies, you're generally destroying the society, this is not what you're bringing to the people. So we tend to think that, one, you're being unloyal to the party, but even secondly, this was not the incentive as to why you were put in that particular position, and that is where we think that patronage system generally mitigates certain harms. Thank you.
Then the first master from side opposition argues that being political is actually an advantage, considering you're holding the position of a cabinet secretary belonging to a certain political party that is currently ruling the state by the merit of you actively being part of the executive department. I think it's been an engaging first round, hearing from the masters themselves with deep analysis and even very amazing points of explanations and different intuition pumps to help us buy their argument. We'll be going on a short commercial break, but before you do, allow me to advertise one thing. I'm dressed in Vugutsa crochet. Message her on Instagram and allow her to make you a crochet item at your convenience. See you after a few minutes. Thank you for hanging in this masters round where we have speakers who are masters in the sport themselves. The argument that has happened in the first half is an argument as to whether we need cabinet secretaries to be technocrats or to be politicians as a whole. With that, we welcome the second speaker proposition to continue the argument. Hear, hear. Yeah.
Hello, just give me a second. I set up my timer and then I shall begin my speech. Panel, we think it is quite a question that, or when the citizens ask themselves, we care about climate change, but it is not quite clear that the MP we elect is the best at dealing with climate change issues. We may agree that it is necessary for the parliament to listen to the people's problems, but it is not quite clear why the members of parliament are then in the best position to be able to handle these issues themselves. We ask the question of accountability, and this is important because it means that that parliamentarian can call the expert in climate change and ask, what have you done to try and mitigate the level of CO2 emission, which means there exist active mechanisms of ensuring that when you promise you're going to deal with climate change, you can hold that CS accountable and ask them, what have you done? When we said you're going to provide free education, this does not mean that the MPs need to be teachers. It doesn't mean like they need to actually do any of this. It is not quite clear what is the difference. Their only individual argument is that they will be in one party and they will listen. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Let us have a bit of preliminary rebuttal and then we shall do an extension. Panel, we think it is important to notice that a lot of the citizens who exist in Kenya probably do not depend on their own lives a lot. They depend on the services of the government. And the arm of implementation is the executive, and would wish that it has long-term goals. It does not only exist in the political arena, because while they may say that they review the previous CSs who may have existed under other regimes, the truth is, if we get in and we are the ruling power, and this is what we do, you just simply wipe the slate clean and introduce all your new CSs and all your political friends, and you get them into power. My partner already alludes to this and tells you about the short-term nature of this kind of system, but we don't think this makes a lot of sense, because education, infrastructure, hospitals, even things to do with debt cannot just be dealt with in spaces of 5 years. Necessarily, you mess up that system for a thing that is not necessary. That kind of thinking doesn't make too much sense if you go down that road. We think we agree with them saying there's a problem. It is not quite clear why the MP is in the best position. Panel, we think some things need to be noted. The veracity of harm. How a lot of citizens depend on the actions of government, that if I need certain public services, my only recourse is the government. I have no other alternative, which means that to the extent there exist inefficiencies and wastage of resources, it is vulnerable citizens who are most likely to suffer, and probably not those people who can already access private means of helping themselves. It is the family which is not able to access maybe food for that day. It is distribution systems of cereals and other foods in Kenya that do not work, that affect the most vulnerable individual, or the farmer who is waiting for payment and the money is squandered. The individuals who depend on pension funds that get stolen away. We think that is a huge problem, and that is what they need to contend with when they say that my friends will head that post. And the thing is, they say they have experts, they will suggest things. That is it. All they can do is suggest. You can't actually get the person in the position of the CS to actually do what you think is the better thing. We think to the extent that even if you exist in a scenario where the CS may challenge the kind of procedure that exists, there's still an issue of, does this actively benefit the people? What is the day-to-day experience of a citizen? Did my interaction with Huduma Center get better? Did I get my passport, or do I always have to bribe? And we think that is a problem. To the extent that day-to-day systems will be under the idea that for me to get things done, I need to engage in favor trading. Because think about it this way, an industry is controlled by whoever is at the top. When they set the pace, the rest follow. If the person at the top sets the pace to be, you do a favor for me, I do a favor for you, you necessarily entrench the system of favor trading, and we think that is a problem. To the extent that for you to need these services, you're in a position that is very vulnerable, we think that is a problem, and we cannot go down that road. They have not been able to debunk the issue of party loyalty, because we may agree that you have won the seats in parliament, which means that you're the majority. But to the extent that you also get the majority in cabinet, it means these are two arms of government that can necessarily abuse any level of power and have no way of holding them accountable, because you simply say they need to be in one party for them to get things done. We think that is a problem. But the question is, how else do politicians get better? It is the issue of giving people favors. It is the issue of me staying loyal to somebody. So whenever the people of your county say, go vote no to the finance bill, it is a situation where these parliamentarians still voted yes, because they answer to the person who controls their party, they do not answer to the people. And if you further entrench a narrative where party politics is the only way we engage with systems, you are in a problem. You destroy any semblance of accountability, because you do not hold anyone accountable, you just run the party. If that person is in our party, they can get away with what they want. When there is Olympics, they can go with their family, it really doesn't matter.
All your problems, you say, are as a result of a weak legislature. If you have an expert in the cabinet running all of this, but the legislature is still the problem, the CSS just enforce these policies, how are they going to make a change to impact the lives of the people?
Sorry, go again.
All your problems you talk about are as a result of the legislature. If you have a competent...
Okay. Sorry, these are not problems of the legislature. My argument is clearly that politicians are looking to trade favors. If they are going to look to trade favors for this system, they will do it within the legislature, considering no one can hold them accountable. If I am the minister of CS, I go with my president to campaign so that I give him a bit of an edge so I can get this job again. Necessarily the abuse of power and the use of government system to enhance my political situation is always going to be the problem in that side. We have proven to you party loyalty, the problem with fairness, accountability, the lack of separation of powers, and the problems of efficiency. Individual gain will be pursued. The cabinet will be nothing short of a different ground for these parties, and the CS will be campaigning for whoever his party leads. You will not have an independent part of the government. Thank you.
We have come to the end of the last speaker from side proposition. Welcome the second speaker from side opposition.
Before I begin, it's an honor to be in this episode. Lovely to have these teams that are here. I was giving them a chance to win. They've decided not to take that chance. It's okay. If you only focus on beauty when searching for a woman to marry, you end up marrying a beautiful problem. There's essential entities you have to look at when you want to run a government. The motion is very specific. The government of Kenya. Notice that a government of Kenya has 3 legal arms, but has 3 arms: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. All these problems you get from this side are a problem of one arm of the government, the legislature. The members of parliament that they talk about is the legislature. What we actually talk about in this debate is one of cabinet secretaries, an arm of government which is called an executive. For all these impacts that these people talk to you about to materialize, it essentially means that these cabinet secretaries should be able to make policies on their own, not just to enforce them. It's more than just declaring holidays like Ramon wants to tell you. If you want to influence people's lives, you don't talk about declaring holidays. If you want to influence people's lives, you talk about these CSs being able to make policies which they don't tell you in any essence can work, which cannot work in a system that we live in, which cannot work in the government of Kenya, which is not true. Cabinet secretaries are members of the executive. They serve the will of the executive. The work of the executive is to implement and enforce laws that were passed by the legislature. The CSS, the executive is headed by the president. Therefore, the cabinet secretaries enforce the will, they enforce the policies of the government of the day. Question panel, and to even you at home, if the government of the day has very harmful policies for you, even if you are to elect the best qualified technocrat in this instance, will they miraculously guarantee you all of these benefits? This doesn't work. What we've seen currently in months before declarations by the Gen Z telling that we want to have an accountable government in all three arms. Largely, the problems they paint to you are problems of one executive, of one legislature arm of the government, which is essentially not the burden of this debate. So let me educate them a bit. The executive under Chapter 9 of the Constitution comprises the president, the deputy president, the attorney general, and not fewer than 14 and not more than 22 cabinet secretaries. All of these people, the requirements for them, or all of these cabinet secretaries, the requirement for them to be appointed by this government as CSS is one. You look at the professional training and experience. You look at the personal integrity and background. You look at academic credentials. It doesn't mean that when you have a patronage system where you appoint CSS, you're just going to pick a standard 4 dropout. You have to look at academic qualifications of the same. Yes, this can mean that you can have a CS of health who is not was not graduated with a degree in health. You can have a CS in the Ministry of Youth Affairs who does not have skills in youth affairs. You can have all of this happening, provided that they are academically qualified, they have all of these credentials, is something that is key in this debate. Essentially, cabinet secretaries are managers or CEOs of these ministries. They have a team of experts, they have a team of technocrats below them. They have permanent secretaries, principal secretaries. It doesn't mean we don't have expertise and technique in this ministry. We do. All we need is for us to have a manager and a CEO who importantly understands politics. And this is going to be the burden of the case of the opposition side. That this executive arm of the government is largely politicized. One, because the president is elected by political merit. The people elect democratically the president because of political merit. It therefore means that these people, one, even on the question of accountability, these people, one, have to answer questions from parliament, a political system in and of itself. Two, the opposition, a political system in and of itself. The rest of the country, you at home can question your MPs or your CSS. You at home can question the cabinet, different political affiliations. So it all says that all of these have to be politically affiliated. They have to defend government policies which are political. So largely, cabinet secretaries or the executive exist in an environment where it is political. For you to get people who can best manage these policies or can best enforce the policies you want as the government of the day, you do not want just a technocrat, you want a politician. It therefore means that the government of the day, because the cabinet are appointed by the president, one, the president gives or nominates lists of people to be appointed in the cabinet. It goes to the National Assembly for them to vet and for them to approve. Finally, after they approve, there's even more checks and balances. There's even more accountability. There's even more provisions in the Constitution for these members of parliament to actually recall cabinet secretaries. There's even provisions for the president himself to actually fire or sack these members of parliament, like we saw happening a month ago. There's even provisions for you at home as a citizen to actually vote, make a vote of no confidence against these cabinet secretaries. Accountability does exist. The biggest question, therefore, should be, in an environment where there is political tension, secondly, CSS exists in an environment where, like all other employment factors, they have a contract as per the performances contracts they sign. They want to remain employed in power. It brings in the intrinsic ability, or it brings in the intrinsic characteristic of human beings to be selfish and to have an insatiable urge to achieve more power, to achieve more relevance. These experts and technocrats in a capitalistic setup, as Perez would actually put it, essentially means that these people would still be no different. They will still be politicized. They will still have political interests. Politics will still exist. For us to have people who actually enforce the policies that we want as a government, as the government of Kenya, in a political setup, we want people who are politicians, people who can manage this. It doesn't mean you're going to get standard 4 dropouts. We're just going to get the best qualified politicians to do this, and we think that is better. Thank you.
Amazing speeches from the second half of this debate, with the arguments being on the argument of whether we need technocrats or politicians, especially in a space where we are filled with politics and filled with policy enactment and enforcement. We'll be going on a short commercial break, and once we are back, we'll get to hear from our amazing judges who they think has won the Masters round and who hasn't. See you in a few minutes. Welcome to the third segment of this Masters round, where we get to hear from speakers and judges as a whole. What has happened in the first 2 beats of this debate is that the argument has been between having technocrats or politicians to hold cabinet secretary positions for the state. Side proposition has argued that we think that the idea of having cabinet secretaries is further reinforced when you have technocrats who directly affect the lives of people by their way of implementing these policies. From side opposition, they argue that the whole idea of having politicians allows them to navigate the political space in a much better capacity in the rate of implementation of these policies. I think it's a beautiful argument from both teams. We don't know what the debate will come into. With that, the judges have a question to side proposition and opposition.
Okay, so my question goes to proposition. So opposition have said that even if appointed through patronage, we still have experts within these spaces to be able to advise these individuals as to how they're supposed to go on with these policies. So what is the nuance that is going to be introduced when these people are just appointed through merit?
Okay, so the question to the opposition is this. You already make a concession that the executive will enforce policies from the legislature. So the question is, at this point, what matters? Is it just passing laws that are according to the party line, or is it passing laws that might be for the benefit of the people, even if it deviates from party lines?
I gather the debaters have had the questions. With that, we welcome speaker from side proposition with 1 minute to respond to the question. Hear, hear.
Okay. So you ask whether, considering there is access to experts, we don't think the problem is the lack of good ideas, but is the opportunity to implement them to the extent that you can implement them with independence. Because the problem is, on their side, whenever anyone within this place wants to do anything, it has to be according to the party. They talk about accountability, but it is unclear to me why us as a party called Jubilee would then hold one of our highest ranking members accountable if it still suits the party line. They will toe the party line. We think the best place is if they remain in parliament, because from there they can make the laws and they can ensure that whoever is in the executive follows it. And to an even a better extent, they can hold them accountable when they stray from this. They can be the politicians who ensure the executive functions efficiently without risking corruption. The very risk is the problem, not that it is always going to happen, but it probably will.
to respond to your question, we think that the legislature and in another arm of the government is responsible to make or to pass laws that work for the people. If the laws passed by the legislature are good for the people, then the cabinet secretaries or the cabinet in its all its essence or its executive enforces and follows it. So the biggest problem should be, or the biggest question should be, if the problem is in the legislature, why do we blame the cabinet secretaries? They cannot make these policies, they only enforce these policies. Competence does not mean only technical skills in the field. There are other more technical people in that field. You need a politician to actually oversee, to coordinate, to supervise these ministries, to implement your policies as a government. And as a government, you want somebody who can handle the political pressure. You want somebody who is familiar with this, not whether they're politicians or technocrats, but largely because of somebody who can handle this. You need a wife who can defend you. You need a wife who can handle things in your absence. You don't just need a beautiful wife. You need somebody who can do the things in order while you're away. The executive arm of the government is supposed to do that. The cabinet secretaries are supposed to be politically appointed. Yes, thank you.
Meritocracy versus patronage has been the debate that we've had for this master's round. I will allow the judges to give us the justification and the call for the round.
All right. Shout out to my cobbler, first of all. He's called master as well, so this is a nice opportunity. But nonetheless, I think the round was quite interesting. For this one, we did give it to proposition above opposition on a unanimous call. Here's why. So the first defense we get from proposition is on the critical nature of the CS position. I think this is something which then switches on the second speaker's metric to become a point on urgency in and of itself, which is not taken down by opposition in general. But the second thing we then get from government is on the characterization of what these two individuals look like and, what they bring to the table. Whereas one individual is, a loyalist, who has a political debt they need to fulfill. The other one is, educated and they have no conflict of interest whatsoever. The third thing we then get from Gov is on the idea on why expertise matters. It comes off of the back of the frame that they've kept within the debate, that it's an urgent scenario, we need to be able to, just protect people's lives and that sort of thing. The fourth thing we then get from proposition is on the idea of accountability, which again is not taken down by opposition. The final thing we then get is on favor trading and why this sends out a signaling effect to other individuals and why this is very, very bad. Most of these things aren't largely touched by opposition. What opposition does within the debate is they sort of try and find their way around the burden by pushing it to be a thing which legislature alone can be able to foresee. So if anything, we should be targeting the legislature. But I don't think this is quite accurate, especially because the motion assumes that CSs also have some level of change and capability that they can be able to implement things which necessarily help individuals who exist. I think this is backed by the concession that these are individuals who are CEOs, to quote quote unquote. But yeah, so it needed more defense in terms of just the accountability, being able to prove why the technocrats who exist in status quo are going to help, to the extent where the defense from proposition is that these individuals only suggest. But the final thing is on policy implementation. But you see, policy implementation can only work to the extent where you're able to prove that it's something which is good for the collective. So it's not something which is only good for one actor, to the extent where you're proving that it only works for us as the government. You need to stretch the argument to prove why for the collective and the citizens, given the framing that we're in an urgent situation, would be very, very relevant. And in that regard, it then means that Wycliffe, unfortunately, shall not be adding a victim to his list, but rather it shall be Kiragu having his first win on campus debates.
So apparently, Wycliffe did not manage to actively beat side proposition despite his first opening speech when he was giving it. Side proposition has managed to win the Masters round, with Ramonjo and Kiragu Kimani speaking for the team as proposition. I think by that, the state has a direct incentive to actively hire technocrats, even as they're trying to fill the cabinet secretary positions going forward. For side opposition, however, they've not been able to defend the whole idea of having patronage as a system to actively having cabinet secretaries or even to defend status quo as a whole. But hopefully, in the following rounds, we'll get to see them judge the amazing debaters that will come before them in the next rounds that follow. We have officially come to the end of the Masters Round, the first ever Masters Round we've been able to have in Campus Debate Season 2, where the speakers before you are among the greatest speakers that we have as a debate circuit to offer to you. I think it's been engaging, it's been fiery, and it's been lovely to get to hear the perspectives of the judges. See you next week on Monday at 8 p.m. with me, Masivu Gutsa.